This podcast is independent from my studies at Texas A&M's College of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. This is intended to share knowledge and experiences in the field of veterinary medicine and to share the importance of medicine for the pursuit of science and its positive effects on the general public. How are you?
Good.
Yeah. Here, introduce yourself real quick.
All right. I'm Katelynn Sharpe. I work at the Texas A&M Veterinary Medical Large Animal Hospital in radiology, which is where I met Tyler. But went to undergrad at A&M for animal science and now have been working at the hospital for 5 years, 2.5 years as a student worker, and now a little over 2 years as a full-time employee.
Cool. Yeah, we met in undergrad many moons ago in radiology, back in the small animal radiology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's it like now working in large?
It I tell a lot of people, like, it's different but the same, and they both have, like, their advantages and disadvantages. I really liked working in small. It's a very, like, uniform, like, you do your main things are your thoraxes, your abdomens, your TPLO rads, and, like, it's almost like surgical precision.
Mm-hmm.
And then large animal is more of, like, the Wild West, and, like, you're underneath a horse taking hip rads, and it's standing on 3 legs, and you have to figure out how to get through a 1,200-pound animal. And so they both have, like, really cool aspects to it, and I like the creativity of large animal, but sometimes I miss the, like, exactness of small.
Do you think it's changed your mind on which species you want to work with in the future?
I'm still a small animal girly at heart, but I do really enjoy working with especially the horses. Kind of forgot that I am a little bit of a horse girly, not hardcore horse girly, but I like my horses.
Did you do anything with horses in undergrad or growing up?
Well, I grew up, my dad had horses and grew up riding like recreationally, not competitively or anything, but I do really like horses. And then undergrad, I felt like a fish out of water in large animal, or not large, in animal science and all of the ag people. I grew up in Austin, so not exactly FFA. There was not FFA at my school.
There wasn't, like for
No,
sure.
like if you wanted to participate in FFA, you had to go like to the barn of another school, and like they didn't advertise that you could do it. There was a few people I knew who did do that, but yeah, you couldn't just like join FFA at the high school because they like had our school got such a large population that they had to like start taking over buildings to like make more classrooms. So the class or the area that was like the barn and like the ag area quickly like turned into a gymnasium.
Hmm. Yeah, your high school, I think we've talked about in the past, is one of the very few high schools that had larger classes sizes than mine. Like, what
Yeah,
was
so
it? 1,200, 1,300?
um my class was like 890,
Oh, okay.
but the underclassmen like classes that were starting whenever I was graduating were like 1100.
It grew that much in like 2 or 3 years.
I mean, think about the Austin area. It is
It's a good point.
growing at a rate that is really like unmeasurable. Like,
Yeah, especially I haven't been there since what was that? 2017 probably. But yeah, the I can imagine like before COVID, during COVID, it just blew up.
I mean, the like country road leaving Round Rock, which where I grew up, uh, was like farmland across from like big baseball field that we had out there. And now I think North America's the largest indoor water park is there.
Yeah.
I've yet to go, but apparently it's really cool.
Interesting.
And it is giant and is where all of that farmland was.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it weird going back?
Yeah. Like, there's now a bunch of overpasses right next to my high school, which is crazy that that much has changed in, oh gosh, I guess 6 years.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my family, like, my dad went to Round Rock High School too, and, the change from the 90s to whenever I grew up was insane, and now even just last 5, 10 years, the change is insane.
I guess it's just how it goes. Things change when you move out. I definitely, whenever I go back home, I remember growing up in parts of, I guess, our current neighborhood were just a bunch of forests and a bunch of trees. And yeah, they just expanded and to the point where they couldn't expand anymore. And so there's no more like forest that surrounds the neighborhood. It's kind of interesting. Feels weird.
Yeah, I mean, everybody just wants to live in Texas. Fucking
Texas pride. Um, what was it? You said you were kind of a fish out of water coming here as an animal science major, not really having a lot of large animal experience. I was very much the same way. Can you kind of describe what that was like?
the best like story that I can like come up with to like really encapsulate that is sitting in like Zoom lecture because 2020 and Dr. Ramsey's animal science like 107 class, and he asked something about like, does anybody know what, like the going rate for corn is nowadays? And I'm like, who knows that stuff? Like, just out of their brain. And like the comment section of the Zoom was just like filled with people who knew the answer to that. And I was like, oh, these people are buying corn for their livestock.
Yeah,
And I just, it hadn't occurred to me that I guess ag school, there is a lot of ag people, but I was like, I rode horses. I've been around cows before. I was considered like somewhat country for my high school being near Austin. And so like suddenly being like, oh, these are the country people. And I knew people who were more country than me, and I'd never considered myself like that country. But yeah, getting to undergrad, I was like, oh, these people are like really into cows, for lack of a better word. But then once we started having in person classes, I started to feel like a little bit more like, oh, I'm in the middle ground. Because there was people in our labs who were like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a sheep up close before.
that was me. That was me. Yeah, you're talking about me.
People are like taking selfies with the sheep, like, oh my gosh, I met a sheep today.
So I didn't take any selfies. I was more of like in shock, like, oh, like we got to do what we were
You
doing,
have to
huh?
flip a
Okay.
sheep?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I talked about that with the past episode with Dr. Lahan. I was like, you want me to do what to this sheep? Why are we doing this? Like, they seem fine the way they are, and but no, it was funny.
Yeah, I'm still not sure I've ever successfully flipped a sheep.
It's not easy.
It's not.
Um, and it's not like it's painful for them or uncomfortable. It's just like they're like, "What are you doing? Don't." It's kind of like, how can I? What's an analogy for a dog? It's like the first time telling them to sit. It's
Yeah.
like they're like, "What? You want me to?" And you're like pushing their butt down. It's like, "No, no, no, do get in this position." They're
It's
like,
like
"What are you
whenever I put
talking
a
about?"
collar on my dog for the first time and he literally sat there like this, like on the ground, and he just holding his head, and he it's like, "Oh my gosh, why is there something on my neck?" And I mean, after 30 minutes, he was like, "Oh, it's just a little cool necklace I got."
At any point, did you feel like the people in animal science were kind of like, "You are not one of us"? Like,
No.
okay,
I feel like animal science people were all I feel like it was a really tight-knit, like, group. I didn't have, like, a lot of close friends in animal science other than people I met, like, through the hospital and stuff, but they were all very supportive, which I've heard, like, other degree plans that like, BIMS I've heard is really competitive, and I mean, obviously, I've never experienced it, but I felt like the animal science community was very uplifting and supportive of, like, because there are so many different career paths you can take with it. Everybody was like, "Heck yeah, you do your thing." Like, you told people you're a pre-vet, and they're like, "That's insane. You must be so smart." and you're taking Okim, crazy. But then there's also people who like went straight out of college to like have a job that's going to pay them 100K selling meat to restaurants. I'm like, that's really cool. And I see people who like are now coaches at other universities for horse judging, and feel like it's a really cool to see how many different things you can do with one degree.
It's definitely diverse in the options that are presented afterwards. I I didn't really know the breadth and the kind of the extent that the animal science world is, because I was in the same way in high school. Like, I guess we had 4-H FFA, but it wasn't until I guess this last year when I went home and I was talking to one of my old high school classmates who, without me knowing at the time, went off and did animal science at another university,
Hmm.
so not here. And we were chatting, and she was like, "Yeah, I didn't know we had a 4-H or FFA, but we did just on this satellite campus thing. We called it a career center. We had
Hmm.
like 3 attached to our high school, and so one of them had like welding if you wanted to do that.
That's cool.
And yeah, it is like uh another one is like graphic design or architecture, like different. If you knew what you wanted to do, they offered it, just not on the main campus. And so we yeah, coming back and being like, "Oh, I guess," but no one talked about it at the time. Um, and yeah, I kinda had a similar experience with the animal science people. They were like, "Oh, cool. Like, you're doing your thing." And then some of them went off and they're like, "I know I'm going back and taking over the ranch, and
Yeah.
it's a big business kind of thing." And they knew all these different things about the animal science world. I was like, "I'm not even close to figuring all that out. So you do you."
I remember whenever I took like one of my equine electives, and we were given a project where you had to like come up with a like breeding program for a specific like you had to pick like your sire and dam and everything, and like she was like, I actually have thought about this before. Like she was in my group and she's like, I've thought about this before. Just let me like I have all the information y'all need. And I was like, you just have your dream lineage picked out already? And she's like, yes.
Hmm.
I was like, okay. You can take the reins with like picking that, and we'll just help fill in the blanks in the project then if you have a dream scenario that you've already thought about outside of this class.
Yeah, one of the things I've kind of noticed over the past couple of years of vet school is like I'll be in class and I'll be trying to think about what they're talking about, and I'll like automatically get into the mindset of what I had in undergrad with a lot of the animal science classes, which was I'm just doing this to get a grade, and in 5 years I won't be thinking about this thing and I'll forget it anyways. So I just need to get past this semester. But the problem with vet school is like I'm learning about the things that I will be doing for the next like for I guess for my
Forever.
entire career. Yeah, I was trying to put a time frame on it, and that's not really how that works. But no, for my entire career, I'm going to be thinking about all these like the microbiology and the anatomy and the physiology. And so I have to like snap myself out of that. And no, in animal science, I feel like looking back, all those animal science people who went there for the agricultural experience because they weren't going to vet school, they were doing all the other things in ag. Like they're like, this is what I think of outside of school. This is what I think of, and we talk about at home with family, or like when I go to work, and this is what I do. Like that is the stuff that they aren't just trying to get a grade for. They're
Yeah.
trying to keep like forever. So it's interesting.
So there was definitely some like really cool stuff that I feel like we learned in animal science. There's also a lot of stuff where I was like, I don't foresee myself needing to know winter grasses in
Yeah.
my future, which maybe I will be wrong and there will be a time where it all becomes relevant. But
I want to say that look, I'm not a horse or a large animal person, and like you could really go off the deep end of like nutrition, but so far what we've discussed is like 4 or 5 different types of grasses. Nothing even close to the number of grasses we've talked about in undergrad with our nutrition and
Mhm.
feeds class. And no, I was in the same boat. I remember sitting down for our feeds final exam. Like, look, they can ask me about what the warm season, cold season, like which is a legume. I'm gonna try. Like, I'm gonna not even worry about those questions and just hope there's not too many. Like, I did not bother memorizing them because I knew that I wasn't gonna get anywhere because I didn't care that much.
That was definitely like one of those classes where I was like, okay, we're gonna come up with like a mnemonic device and like memorize that stuff, and then I really enjoyed the like actual like feeding protocol part of that class, but just memorizing grasses was rough.
Do you think you're better at memorizing or rote memorization of things rather than trying to remember complex thought processes thought processes?
I I think it really depends on like the subject matter. Cause like I think for certain classes, like my equine electives where we had to learn the like entire like cycles and stuff like that, like viewing them as a big complex picture was how I feel like I memorized it. But things like for microbio where we had to learn all of the like peptides and stuff like that, it that I felt like it was just brute force
Mhm.
drilling that into your brain.
Well, I remember you were pretty good in the microbiology class that we had together. Because we didn't have every class together, but we had a couple, and microbiology was one of them. And there were some times after exams we were all chatting about stuff, and you were like, "Yeah, it's this thing," and I was like, I just couldn't remember some of the names of the agents because I that's one of the things I struggle with, and I was like, "Huh, yeah."
See, I feel like I remember that class in the exact opposite of you like having this like big picture understanding of it and me being like, I just got to remember what the names of them are, man. I
Maybe I faked it pretty good. No, that microbiology is tough, at least for me. Some like in vet school, I that is one of the things I've noted, and like I'll force myself to go back and look at my notes and be like, I need to remember these things. And slowly I'm getting there. But
microbio was one of those classes that like taught me not just about like the actual class, but taught me about like how to be a better studier because I struggled hardcore through the entire first half of that class. And like sometimes you have to just like play around with what different techniques work and have a few of them fail before you find the one that works for that class. And I definitely experienced that. And then like I think it was right before the like second to last exam, I figured it out what worked for that class. And I was like, oh wait, now I can actually like, do really well.
do you remember what techniques those were?
um I I'm trying to remember. I feel like that one we had like quite a bit of practice material for that. Like 'cause we had our practice exams and stuff like that where we had
Mm-hmm.
sample of what like the questions were going to be like. And I feel like I must have just like had to start testing myself. And I also found somebody in that class that like their brain worked a little bit closer to like how mine worked. And they'd come up with a bunch of like silly sayings and stuff that like for memorization purposes and stuff. And that was like the first time I think I had a study group that really helped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not start studying with them until the very end of the semester.
Hey, better late than never.
Yeah. I will say the most insane study tip I had was actually I think it was the semester before that was in genetics. We were allowed to have like one paper of like notes to go into every
Mm-hmm.
exam, and I found that like by the time I finished making that sheet of paper, when I got to the exam, I maybe looked at it once. And so I was like, oh, so like actually compiling, like reading through all of my notes and deciding what was really the important key stuff that I needed to remember and then copying that down
Mhm.
and then studying based off of that one page because it was easy to carry that one page around with me was actually, like, really helpful, which I'm sure was, like, the point of the professor had was, like,
Probably.
you won't actually need it if you actually spend the time to make a thorough cheat sheet, and so that final season, I made a cheat sheet for all my classes, even though I wasn't allowed to take it into the exam,
Mhm.
and then I just studied off of those cheat sheets, and I got exactly the grades I needed,
Yeah.
so I probably would have never come up with that if it wasn't for that one class, and I've given that advice to, like, incoming freshmen and stuff who've asked me, I'm like, "Even if your class doesn't let you, like, compile everything from this unit into one page and, like, weed through the most important stuff, and typically by that time, you'll, like, sunk it into your brain, and you won't actually need to see it to know it. You'll be like, "Ah, yes, in the top right corner, I wrote this," and I found it very helpful.
I know people in my class who are doing that in vet school right now, and I do it to a degree. I kind of at this point, I make a Word document for each exam, and I
Mhm,
just type out all the things. Problem is, I don't I can never fit it all on one piece of paper, and I never try. I write down what I think I might need to know. And also, this is more pertinent for, like, vet school classes as compared to, like, the animal science undergrad. 'Cause we'll both, like, go back, and at some point, it could even be, like, 10 years down the road, and those can be, like, reference material for
mhm.
things, and so sometimes, especially towards the like, finals, I'll be really I'll be on kind of my brain's last leg, and I'll be like, "I really don't wanna make these study materials," like, I won't even have that much time to look over them before the
Mhm.
exam, like, "What's the point of doing this?" And I'm like, "No." It'll be really helpful, way, like, down the line. I could actually go back and look at this stuff instead of trying to filter through probably 1,000 different slides of all the different presentations put together. So, no, the forcing yourself to kind of summarize large topics is definitely helpful. Um, but looking forward, you are actually in the middle of applying for vet school.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, Tim Doss just got a makeover, I don't know if you heard about that.
Mhm. I did hear about it.
Yeah, it's definitely different because this is my 4th time applying, and luckily it does save everything, so that was good. But it also has an autosave feature, which was my biggest grief with the old version of Tim Doss was that it did not save your stuff,
Mhm.
and so I, on multiple occasions, had entire pages of information deleted, which now, like, it'll tell you, like, as soon as you finish writing something, it's like, "Saved," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, praise the Lord."
It's like, before it was the old version of Windows where, like, uh, you would type something out and you would exit out without saving, and it wouldn't even warn you. It's like, "I guess you just lost it." It's like, "Sorry."
No, there was one time it was the first time applying that I had, like, it was, I think, the, like, achieve or the awards and, like, recognitions, and I got through the entire page, and I went and clicked the next button. You would assume next means save and next. It does not mean save and next, it just means next. And so I would go to the next page, I fill that entire page out, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm trying to remember, did I put that on that last page?" And I go click the back button, and I go back, and I'm like, "Wait, where did it all go?" And then I see the little save button at the bottom, I'm like, "Oh, you have to hit save or else it doesn't save it." And then I'm like, "Oh, I didn't do that before I went back to this page." So I deleted 2 pages within a matter of an hour, and I had to take a break for a little while.
That's fair.
I think I had to take, like, a week break because I was like, "I just wasted, like, 2 hours of my life."
Yeah. Yeah, the application process is not fun.
I will say, though, they're making it more user-friendly, which that is very appreciated.
Um, what is your mindset while applying this round?
Hmm. I because I've applied before, my like first step is just getting everything updated. But my mindset is because you know this, but my first time applying, I didn't get an interview. Second time applying, I got an interview and I got waitlisted. Third time, got interviewed and then did not get waitlisted or accepted. And so I really have been thinking and like kind of going over all the components of my application. And obviously, there was something that is in there that they like that I've gotten an interview twice or something they liked enough to get waitlisted. And so it's really making sure that I'm optimizing my experiences and highlighting the high points in a way that like I define my strengths because I feel like so many different kinds of applicants. Like there's applicants who have like the really high GPA and there's applicants who have really like insane life experience and then like the non-traditional applicants and really finding where you fit in those and then trying to play up those strengths. Like I think I have good grades. I do not have a 4.0 by any means, but I graduated with honors. And so like I think I can go with I'm a good student, but my experience I think is what makes me a good applicant. And I think it's a cool experience that I've gotten to work in a teaching hospital that it's an opportunity and experience that not a lot of people can say they have. And especially working in a specialty as like defined and specific as radiology. Like those I like went back one summer and worked at the clinic that I worked at in high school and like seeing the x-ray taking process there versus I'm sure you have also experienced this. It's a very different experience that like we are very tunnel visioned almost in that state of like there is a very high performing level and there's nothing technically wrong with most GP rad taking, but there is a like ivory tower textbook version that like we're trained to. And I feel like that's a really cool opportunity to do that and then also work with all of these like insanely talented specialists. And I've seen like really cool cases working in a specialty hospital that like I don't think working at a GP I would have ever seen.
Yeah, I do go back. I don't really go back to clinics, but I have gone to other clinics in the area that I grew up in and did shadowing and externships. And for the most part, I'm taking notes, I'm observing, and I'm trying to learn what I can, ask questions when I can. And then as soon as we step into the radi uh the radiology suite or wherever they were taking x-rays, I immediately am like, okay, like I'm looking at all the things and I'm taking note, but as soon as the image shows up, I'm like, I know what to expect. I know how to get it. Like I just there isn't as many. I'm not in the learning mind. I've just been like, okay, I've done this so many times.
Radiation machine.
Yeah, it's just it, it's kind of like on you're on autopilot, just going.
Oh yeah, I've joked several times. I think I could like set up a TPO rad in my sleep just because I've done the motions so many times. And but it's definitely a like pre-programmed setting now in my brain.
That's got to be the same thing for all the technicians within both the large and small animal hospital. Where now with radiology, it is very specific. We are just taking images all day long. I say you are taking images all day long. I am not, not on the same level as a radiology technician as you are, but the in the ER, I like the technicians do so many more different things, but they still have like a high caliber and a high expectation that they try and meet. And looking back It's kind of like you said, what technicians do and what is done in general practices outside of the ivory tower isn't inherently wrong. It just it isn't held to the highest standard that a university is.
I mean, that's the thing is like in a GP hospital, their technicians are being the radiology tech, the anesthesia tech, the ER tech, and just helping see appointments. And so they can't spend the amount of energy into one specific thing that I feel
Mhm.
like the people in a specialty hospital can. Is we can focus all of our energy into taking the best rads as possible. And the ER techs only see emergencies, so they can be laser focused on emergency type situations versus, and then like primary care, they are with just primary patients all day. Like they can very specifically hone in on that specific type and be the best at that.
Yeah. Also, adding in on the fact that in general practice, a lot of the times the technician is like a high schooler or an undergrad, which isn't inherently bad. Like we were both high schoolers and undergrads working for clinics. It's
Yes.
just, it's different to have a technician who has a decade of experience um, and is very eager on being the best technician possible. Um, so I remember back in the day, the first clinic I worked at, I was lucky enough to have two technicians like that. They're like, this is what we're doing. Like, this is what we've always wanted to do. And they were super eager about learning how to be the best technician. And now I go to some clinics where there are like one or two, but out of like all of the technicians, most of them are younger, either in undergrad or in
Hmm.
high school. So just different parts of life.
Yeah, I would say I feel like the hospital that I worked at in high school, like I was by far the youngest employee, and everybody that was there, like that was their career and that was their passion and stuff. And so it was really cool seeing like role models kind of in that sense and kind of being taken under the wing. But yeah. Yeah, no, so application though, yeah, it's also been weird trying to go back and like revisit my application each year. And like I was just rereading my personal statement from last year and stuff and just seeing the things that have changed in importance to me over time. Because like it's all going to sound somewhat similar year to year because I mean, I'm still me, but there are still things that were defining events and experiences and characteristics at 22 that now 24 I'm like that was a foundational step, but that is not a key experience to who I am as an applicant today.
What kind of experiences do you think have changed specifically?
I won't say like anything like change per se, but like whereas, graduating college still like there was high school experiences I still felt were like key parts of my being and like having leadership experience in high school that was the like first like big responsibilities I'd ever had. And now I've had a career outside of high school and college and stuff that I've had to take more ownership on and more responsibility of like patience and stuff that like okay, being photo editor of the yearbook is not the most insane high stakes thing that I've done at this point. And it's still a like foundational thing to who I am. I feel like I've built on it a lot. I've had more experiences that are relevant now than I had at I don't remember when I wrote my first essay, but 21, 22.
Yeah, it's almost like um, as you progress in your experience in whatever you're doing, the the level of it or the caliber of that experience and the relevancy of it towards your goal is just greater than the thing that you did previously. And so inherently, like, the thing that you've done in this past year or 2 should be more impactful, or I guess greater in any capacity compared to whatever, like, even the previous 4 years. And so, and I guess that, like, would go for any kind of career,
Yeah.
and for any point in your career.
And I guess a more specific example would be like when I first was applying to vet school, just working in a teaching hospital and getting to interact with fourth year vet students and kind of them show me things they know. And I get to, somewhat tell them, oh, this is how we take this kind of rad. And, but now, I mean, being a full time employee and stuff, like I've helped create teaching material and stuff for the students on our rotation. And I administer their technical assignments and grade them. And it's a just, it's still a similar experience, but it's a different caliber and a different like relationship I've gotten to build with them and a different level of expertise that I've been able to share. And yeah, I like you said, it's not really different. It's just building.
What's it like growing in your teaching ability?
I I would say it public speaking is something that like actually genuinely terrifies me. My public speaking class in undergrad, terrifying. I remember I was so upset. I like barely got a B and it like I think I had a 89 point something and I was so upset, but I also like could not blame the professor at all because there was speeches that like I was just up there shaking like a leaf. And so teaching was obviously intimidating, especially whenever like we will like not lecture, but somewhat lecture, go through stuff at the beginning of every rotation. And with diagnostic imaging, large animal only gets our students for 1 week. So we do it every single week. And doing that, like at first was like terrifying. And I felt like the words coming out of my mouth were like just word vomit and going over obliques. Like the letters were not like I'm trying to say DLPMO and I'm like DPLM and alphabet soup coming out of my mouth. And but I mean, eventually you get used to it and like the more confident you get, the more I felt like I could actually help them. And then I've also taught at a few wet labs now, and that was a bigger group. That was even more scary. And now I've done it twice and not scary anymore. You just have to do it. And yeah, and now like it feels good. I get thank you cards sometimes from students of like
Aw.
y'all actually like were able to communicate it in a way that like makes sense and like broke it down to a like well, like make stupid jokes of like, oh yes, the sesamoids are kissing each other, making it ways that are like easier to remember than just the like we have packets that have like a very technical language how every view should look, but being able to like break it down into simple terms and simple concepts and then show them, I feel like is helpful for a lot of students. And I mean, we try to make it as easy on them as possible because it is something that like most people have not been out there taking equine radiographs. Like there is a certain set of students who have been involved in that, but the average student has never taken an equine radiograph before. And therefore, like I want to help them as much as possible because I had never seen an equine radiograph being taken before I started going over to large animal radiology. And so, and also having been a student so recently in undergrad, I'm like, it's hard, it sucks. So if somebody's like willing to give you a helping hand, I feel like I would like to be that person.
Empathy?
Yes, empathy.
Um, no, the world of the large animal just radiography in general is just so different. I remember the first time, it wasn't at the large animal hospital that I saw it, but the first time I saw equine rads be taken, I was like, "Oh, it's just there's no table." Like,
Yeah,
it isn't, "Oh, lay the patient down and we're going to turn the light on. We're going to move the table and do all this stuff. And anybody who's taken a radiograph at a human doctor up than like themselves, or obviously someone's taking it of you, you're not taking it yourself, but that would be kind of funny. And they're like, hold this button and ready, click. But no, you're just in a room and you're holding what you guys call a banana and a plate, and you got to like make sure both of them are lined up at the right angle, and hopefully the horse doesn't move, and
Yeah.
you take it and then you do move, and hopefully it's right. And if it's not right, you got to go back and adjust it, but you're adjusting based off of a position you are no longer in. And just that all that is a lot more simplified in small animal radiology, at
Yeah.
least in my experience.
Being able to restrain a patient is very helpful. You know, you can keep the dog in one spot, but keeping a 800-pound screaming pig in the same spot is a lot different.
Pigs are always screaming. I don't have a lot of experience with pigs, but that's just how they are. They're moving,
Yeah,
right? Didn't you take a swine class in
I
undergrad?
did. And I went into it not really jiving with pigs. I I think they smell, which
They do.
they uh, but the professor that we had for that swine class was just so into pigs that I was like, "You know what? I do like pigs." And it's because this guy likes pigs so much that it made it interesting. And do I think I have a career in like swine industry? No, but I can appreciate pigs a lot more after that class and his passion for pigs.
Mm-hmm. You and who was it? Will
Yeah, me and
took
Will took
that.
that class together.
You both, I remember you talking about it in the moment. Like, you guys were both at one point genuinely considering, like, oh, could I do something with pigs? Because
Yeah,
this is
no,
so cool.
I remember me and Will were like, we could start a pig farm.
At no point did I ever consider that. I didn't take the swine class, but I took sheep and goat and beef production. And at no point did I ever go, I could do both of these, like production systems. So
I'm not
maybe,
sure I ever thought I actually could, but he was just so passionate about it. And I think it like goes to show that like people who are passionate about what they're teaching, like just it makes it such better of a learning experience for everybody involved. Because I mean, if you would have told me prior to that class I would have been really interested in pigs, I'd have been like, no, I'm just taking this class because I have to choose another elective. But no, by the end of that class, I really enjoyed it.
do you think that's affected the way that you go about teaching?
Probably. I mean, I I don't think that anybody wants to learn from somebody saying, yeah, this is radiology and this is a banana and I guess I'll show you how to take rads. But being like, yeah, this is like what I do and what I enjoy about it and here's some cool tricks that I've learned over the years and that you can learn too. And I mean, I think attitude is a lot about being about the attitude going into something is a lot about how much you enjoy it.
What do you think the past couple of years working as a large animal technician in radiology have like prepared you most about getting into vet school and approaching that goal?
I think it's taught me a lot about problem solving. I Large animal radiology is like you said, you're dealing with so many different factors at the same time where animals moving, you have multiple moving parts and being able to problem solve that and be creative in how you problem solve has definitely been a skill that I think working in large animal radiology specifically has taught me. And I think can be applied to lots of different things within medicine. Of there's I hate the saying, but more than one way to skin a cat.
I've almost said that a couple times on this podcast, and I catch myself, and then I'm like, there's a pause, and it's like, oh, that's real awkward. I should have just said the saying. Like, it's a common saying.
I I've been looking for a different saying to use for it because like there's multiple times with like students I'm like, yes, Like, a lot of times they'll come in with a certain concept of how they have taken radiographs in general practice and stuff, and I'm like, "Oh, well, that isn't wrong.
Mhm.
There's just another way to do it." And that's something that, like, is definitely with doctors from different services and different backgrounds and stuff. Everybody has their own idea about what they've done and what's worked for them, and I think a lot of people have the tendency to be defensive of like, "No, no, my way is the right way," but I think really the cool thing about working with all these people with different experiences is being able to be like, "Oh, I can take this from how you've done it and this from how you've done it and come up with a way that works even better for me." There's not a right or wrong way that we need to argue for. I mean, there's obviously is a wrong way, but
There is a way that you shouldn't do it, but there are many ways that it can be done.
yes.
On the first day of lab for clinical skills, I believe the professor who teaches it says it's like in this course and in this lab specifically, you're going to learn how we want you to learn to do things, but you will have experiences that of doing things slightly different. And if you don't, you're going to go online and you're going to learn things, or you're going to go out there in the world and you're going to go on externships and they're going to teach you things and it might be slightly different than what we're doing here. And that's okay because there are just many different ways to do things. We are just trying to communicate the way that we know how to do it and how we want you to do it, at least in this context.
Mhm.
And then it kind of gives you the base skills to learn all the different nuances in the future. And that was just like a concrete example of when it was communicated to us that there are just a vast number of different ways to get things done, but we're just going to focus on this one right here, right now. And then you can take that and do what you want with it. But the same thing goes with, I think, almost all of our other classes. Whenever we had to come across and try and think of a complex problem or a treatment plan or diagnostics, hypothetical. This is all hypothetical right now, at least in my position. This is like classes. I'm not actually on the clinic floor, but like when we have a written case that was made up and we're trying to figure out the best way to go about figuring out what the answer is, like there are like an infinite number of ways that you can go about it,
Mhm.
and they're not wrong. There's just different ways, and the usually the professor like says, "What do you want to do next?" And someone's like, "Well, I want to do an MRI." And they're like, "You can do that, but this is what I would do." And so
Yeah.
it, I don't think that ever really goes away.
As I think, like, one of the worst things you can be in, like, the medical field is closed-minded to other options. I feel like if you shut down other options, you're limiting your learning and limiting the possibilities out there. And so I definitely have enjoyed a position that like makes me think outside of the one way, this is how you do it, and has like kind of used that muscle of problem solving.
Did you always want to be a vet?
Yeah, pretty much. I my grandfather is a veterinarian and my mom was his hospital manager whenever I was little, and I grew up sitting in the waiting room of the hospital just observing, and that kind of became like what my idealized version of like what a job was. My mom would bring home like extra like expired supplies from the hospital, and I would, she brought home extra vet wrap and tongue depressors, and I splinted my animal stuffed animals' legs. And that was what I did for fun as a child. But I can't really say that there's ever been something else that I've like, ah, yes, this is something else I want to do, which I feel like is kind of a cliche in the veterinary world of people being like, yes, from the time I was a little kid, I wanted to be a vet because I love animals. And that is true. That is what like started it. But then working in veterinary medicine, and there's so many different parts of veterinary medicine that are appealing because I do love animals, and that is, obviously the foundation of it. But I found that I love medicine and the problem solving and the fact that it's like a puzzle to figure out. And then I got a job in high school and stuff, and I found out that I really like client relationships and building those relationships with repeat clients and getting to know people that way. And then went to college and started working in the hospital and found there's just like such a vast world of veterinary medicine out there that, lifetime of learning left to do for that. And I feel like the concept of, yes, I want to be a veterinarian that I had when I was a kid never like dimmed out. So I hope that that's less cliche.
I think it's less cliche than you might expect, at least in my experience. Like, I didn't always know I wanted to be a vet. It wasn't like a dream as a kid to be like, this is what I want to do. And I just never stopped going for it. It was something I just came across kind of in the later high school, early undergrad stage. And you mentioned how there's kind of a plethora of different things that you can learn in veterinary medicine, and like you could learn forever and it really never stops. Like there
Mhm.
is no upper ceiling of it. So, which I think is true. The I've met a handful of new clinicians and trying to get to know them and shadow over the past few months. And I'll listen to rounds and different cases and things that they do and that they are either studying themselves as boarded clinicians or cases that they're working on and things that they're bringing up. And they'll talk about things I'm like, I would have never even thought about this. I didn't even know this was going on, like all this different work and research and different things. And I was like, oh, there's just like different doors that are opened all the time that you just wouldn't expect. So, no, there really isn't an upper limit.
So my grandfather practiced till he was like 82, and he's still at the end of him practicing. I was like, yeah, no, you should still be learning every single day.
What do you think was the biggest thing that your mindset changed on as you grew up and you got closer to applying to vet school?
I think the biggest thing that changed would be the like realistic applications of veterinary medicine. Because I mean, when you're younger, it's a more idealized version of what medicine is, and then you work in it and you realize that there's days that are just awful, and clients that you've known for a long time lose their longtime pet, and it is terrible. And there's cases that you see that are just like sickening. And I think the mindset of whenever you encounter those things and you still are like, but this is still what I want to do, and this is still what I'm passionate about despite the shortcomings of the career field, is what I think made me go, no, this isn't just something that I had in my mind from being a kid and like my dream job. This is something that like I actually want to pursue because I've lived the bad parts of it and still want to keep doing it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that there's a lot of times where people would say that they want to be a veterinarian and then they realize what that actually means and they go, "Oh, I don't want to do this." It's like, "I want to be around a bunch of happy, healthy animals." And it's like, that's not how that works. Like not in the field. The It's like for the most part you are handling animals that do not feel well, and when animals don't feel well, they don't want to be handled. And so even even bringing them in the door, they're like immediately anxious and they don't want to see you. Like
Yeah,
this
I
is
say
you're the last person they want to see. And
being the person that animals actually hate is a definite like, oh dang, I
yeah.
want to pet you, but you're terrified of me in this moment because I
Yeah.
have needles.
Yeah. Even like, and it doesn't, you don't even do anything. They just, they, they know that something is going to happen and it's not even, it's not bad. They just, they overreact because that's what they are. They're just animals.
That that's the thing have to, like, remind myself and sometimes other people of, like, with taking X-rays. We have a giant overhead unit to take X-rays of the horses. It is scary and loud, and the amount of people that are like, "Ugh, the horse is being bad." Like, it's being a horse.
Hmm.
It is a prey animal, and there is a giant thing coming down from the ceiling. I would be scared too. Like, you imagine if you were in the doctor's office and all of a sudden something just came from the ceiling and is making a scary loud noise,
And they don't explain what's
and they don't
happening.
tell you what it is.
Yeah, because you can't be like, "Hey, horse, it's gonna be real loud, and it's not gonna hurt you. I promise you, it's not gonna hurt you. You just have to stand here and let it be loud."
Yeah. And so it definitely teaches you a lot of patience because you're like, you have to understand their instincts and they can't help it, but and make it as fear free as possible to for everybody involved, fear free for them, but also fear free for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. One of the things that one of the first vets I worked for said was because early on they were teaching me how to hold an animal for a physical exam, and there are certain techniques and positions you want the animal to be in, right? As you know, the
Mhm.
so the vet is safe, so that they are safe, and so that you are safe. And they were kind of going through this, and they're like, and kind of in the end, you know, if something happens and you get bit, or they're like, if I get bit or anything, like it's our fault. It's not the
Mhm.
animal's fault. It's our fault. And I thought about that for the longest time. And I was like, that's true. Like,
There's not a single time that I've been bitten that I have not gone, that was my fault. I should have thought better planning of how to handle that situation because they were just reacting.
hmm one of the vet school essays I wrote about, it was more of a had more of a philosophical twist to it, and I think it was for the Vimcast, and so it wasn't even the Texas application, and it was kind of describing how I thought that animals were differentiated themselves from people by the fact that whatever they did isn't inherently right or wrong. For the same reason that if a dog bit you during a physical exam, that they didn't do something wrong. Um, they didn't do anything like it wasn't right or wrong. There was nothing moral about it. They
Mhm.
just did, and they
Yeah.
just exist. And that, in fact, it is the person who brings in any kind of morality into the situation. Um, Probably a weird thing to bring up in a vet school essay. Probably something they were really didn't care for to read, but um, no, at least for me, like early on, within like the first 2 months, that was something I had to come like to grasp with. Like, I was like, okay, this is what the job is, and I'm okay with that.
I would say, going back to what you said about like your essay, do you think that animals have a concept of what's right or wrong?
A concept of right and wrong. I don't think so. And that isn't a bad thing.
No, I'm not saying that. I just was curious because, like, your dog gets into something in the pantry and then looks really guilty. Do
Mhm.
you think that they know that it's wrong, or do they just understand that your reaction's not going to be good?
So it's in what you describe the dog as looking guilty. And now don't get like so many people do that. I'll go home and I'll talk to my parents and they're like, look, like our dog is happy. Look, like this our dog specifically doesn't smile very much in the way that people think that dogs smile. Technically there is only like there is a way that dogs smile, and it's not the way that the most people
Mhm.
think smiling is for dogs. Um, but they'll they'll anthropomorphize our dog and be like, he's happy, he's sad, he's whatever, and or he's guilty or something like that.
Yeah.
And do I think that they have an understanding of what like guilt is? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Like, because at least for us, guilt is both a thought and an emotion.
Mhm.
You can feel guilty, not really know why or really understand what that emotion is per se. Or you could be like, yes, I am feeling guilty and this is why, and this is like
Mhm.
the
Logical
logical.
thought process.
Yeah. So I'm sure to some degree they have a feeling. Is it guilt? I don't know. But, it kind of goes back to the human interaction with that animal. They have some kind of emotion and they're expressing it in some fashion, and that is around a person. And I I think that whatever that feeling is for them, right? Because they do feel emotions,
Mhm.
that it is because of the interaction that they have with that person. So
Yeah.
it's like you talk about getting into the trash. And it's like maybe it's not the first time that that dog gets in the trash, and they're like, well, last time, like, uh, my owner didn't really look too happy, or they said this, or they did these things, and obviously the language isn't. They don't really understand to, or at least to the extent that we understand language with each other, but know that and then you can go down the rabbit hole of like training and conditioning and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But in regards to knowing right and wrong, it is, I don't think that it makes sense to have that as a framework for that kind of
Yeah.
situation.
I definitely agree that I feel like animals' concept of right and wrong is purely probably based in what their owner has taught them is right and what's wrong.
Well, you could even extrapolate it to like, do animals have an understanding of like good and evil? Because I think that right and wrong are almost synonymous with good and evil, just more in a dramatic sense.
Yeah.
And so going back to the kind of to the biting example during a physical exam, like it isn't evil if a dog bit you during a
No.
physical exam. Even if they're like, I don't like this person and I'm going like in their brain, they're like, I am intentionally biting this person. Like that isn't, I don't think that is inherently evil, for the same fact that if a lion like takes down a gazelle in the wild, or an alligator eats like a wild hog trying to drink from a river, like whatever, like the whole ecosystem and the circle of life, I don't think at any point like evil enters the situation.
Yeah. I I definitely agree. I feel like animals are pretty innocent in all of that and that their motives are not evil. You know, the lion's eating the gazelle because it has to eat. Most of the time, whenever a dog bites, it's out of fear or competition or something that is basic animal nature.
Yeah, and I find that a lot of people that I know outside of the vet field do impose human aspects and human thought processes on animals, where it's like, well, one, some of it we don't know, and two, like it's not it doesn't make a bunch of sense sometimes. So it's the whole smiling thing with dogs that gets me, because then I'll see some videos online of, usually it's a little kid like going up to a dog and it's like, oh, he's, or I guess it's not the little kid who thinks the dog is smiling. Little kids just run up to dogs because
Hmm.
they're dogs. But it's grown adults who are like, the dog is smiling. I'm going to go over and pet it. And it's like actually looking off and looking to the side, and you can see the whites, and
The
they're,
signs of like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I'm terrified.
yeah, and they're panting because they're stressed about whatever's going on, and maybe their tail's wagging, but it's wagging like fast and high, and or however like a stressed wag is, because some dogs do that, but they also
Hmm.
do it when they're happy, so easy to get confused. And then the person like it lashes out at the person, and they're like, "What happened?" I'm like, "You just misread this. Like you
The
thought,
signals.
yeah." So which the anthropomorphizing of animals, I think, gets wires crossed
Hmm.
when trying to interact with them. But
I say you talking about the videos just made me think of like you'll see on like TikTok and stuff videos of they're like, oh my gosh, this dog's prancing. Like it has a little funny walk. It's dancing around. And I'm like, I think your dog might be neurologic. Those aren't normal movements for a dog.
Mhm.
And it's definitely just interesting. Like you said, the misreading of signs from a like trained eye versus untrained eye.
Hmm. One of the things in vet school that is kind of a learning curve for some people, and I think it was for me for different species, was understanding those behaviors because they're different across each species. You can't go into like walk up to a cow in a chute and act like it's a dog because it's not. Like it's going to react in different ways, and you're gonna have to compose yourself in a different manner. And you know, it's just they're all so different that trying to impose the human mindset on it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But
I definitely agree. Like having worked with now a wider variety of species that they each one has its own like very unique quirks to it. But it's also funny to see like how certain species are similar. Like I stand by the fact that I think cats and horses are so similar of animals.
in what way?
I think they're very big like vibes creatures. Like they I think even more so than like dogs and stuff, they read your like almost read your mind of whether or not like you're scared to be around them. Like they can feel it. And I'm sure to a degree other species can too, but I feel like horses and cats, like personally, I've experienced that they can just tell whenever somebody else is uncomfortable in the room. That and I also think that there's some similar qualities to like even the owners of horses and cats of like the intensity.
The yeah, the few times that I've worked with horses, I want to say there is a similar mindset of like, okay, let's move calm but quickly because we're gonna
Yes.
run out of minutes. And once the horse doesn't want to participate in what we're doing, then we're not participating. Like,
Same thing with a cat.
yeah, yeah.
I would say, and like that's definitely like something that I have to keep in mind a lot. Like working with horses often is we have students who are terrified of horses, and you don't know what their past experiences have been of why they're terrified of horses, but you have to be mindful of, hey, I want you to be involved as much as possible, but I also don't want anybody to be unsafe by if you're scared and the horse is scared and y'all are just feeding off each other's fear, it's not going to be good. So we can get you involved in ways that aren't dangerous
What's that responsibility like?
of being mindful of other people's safety.
Yeah, but like you are in charge and making sure that people are safe.
it that's definitely one of the major I feel like differences from moving from like student worker to full-time employee is you can't just be thinking about your own safety. You have to, make sure that everybody, you know, is aware of the situation. You communicate patient temperament with people. If there is ever dicey situations, that you as a team come up with a plan of how to get people out of that situation, which I feel like all the doctors and technicians in large animal hospital are obviously very aware of the fact that we are dealing with creatures that are very large and can be very dangerous and do a good job of communicating, hey, if this horse freaks out and I have to like save people and get the horse out, I'm going to go this way. So y'all better go that way. And I would say being a judge of whether or not the learning opportunity for the students is worth the safety level. I mean, because there are certain patients that less is more. You should have as few people in the room as possible. And you always want the students to be able to learn, but you also, I mean, safety comes first. And so sometimes it's okay, there's going to be nobody but technicians and doctors in there. And that's just, we can talk about what we did afterwards, but I sometimes you can only be like, I have to focus on my safety in that situation. And therefore, I can't have a bunch of people that I also need to look out for. And that will increase the stress level of the creature. Cause like that's also obviously always first is patient care and well being.
Maintaining control of the situation.
Yeah. Which, I mean, whenever you're dealing with large animals, a lot of times it feels like almost an illusion of control. Cause, I mean, you can control a horse to an extent, but at the end of the day, it outweighs you by how many times and could really do a lot of damage if it wanted to.
Yeah, one of the things that surprised me most learning about just horses in general early on was the importance of training and getting them to like just be handleable. Handleable? I don't think that's a word. Um, able to be handled by people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, imagine all the dogs of the world and how many aren't, completely trained
Mm-hmm.
to the extent that the average horse is, because they don't have to be. They can just be a dog, and you know,
Yeah.
if they're jumping on people, and maybe not like a Great Dane, that would be a little bit more damaging. But if a dog comes in, it's like, oh, jumping on people, and it's like, hey, don't do that, and you're trying to train them, but it's really not that important, and they're still doing it. If a horse is not, doing what you want it to do, it's like that's a big deal,
Mm-hmm.
because if they don't want to walk down a hallway, but it needs to go down that hallway, they're not gonna. They're just gonna stand there, and you're not pulling them.
Yeah.
So,
I said untrained little chihuahua versus an untrained 1,200-pound horse is a very different scenario. And I feel like definitely one of those situations where people need to educate themselves on what they're getting into whenever they go into animal ownership.
I mean, uh, credit to the equine owners out there in the world. Maybe it's my small like amount of experience with horses, but the minimal experience I have, like I'll be leading, or trying to get a horse to go. Um, I don't know what I'm saying. I'll be leading a horse, I guess,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it'll be a horse that I've never met before, of owners I've never met before, and the horse is doing what I am expecting it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And for dogs in small animal medicine, that is not like an expectation. It's like, hey, like we're going this way, and then they'll try and go down another corner, and it's like, nope, I can stop you, and I can make you go this way. But the horse, like, no. So credit to the equine people out there for that.
No, for real. I mean, I don't. You did the full handling stuff with that equine research study
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
did,
yeah.
and where we had to like get the horses used to being the foals used to being handled,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it wasn't something that I'd ever thought about because I've never really worked with foals before. But I mean, that's one of those things where you train a puppy, the puppy is small still and can do minimal damage, but a foal kicks you and it still hurts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's
As
all
somebody who has been kicked by a foal, it does still hurt.
and it's all very intentional. Like the training of the horses are very intentional. Um, moving forward, other than applying to vet school, what's kind of your goals?
Like post vet school or
Yeah, yeah, or even like your ambitions as you would like to go through vet school, how you would approach that. And then, yeah, after vet school, like, what are your goals there?
I'll say hopefully fourth time's a charm getting in vet school. But I I've always said that I want to do like primary care medicine, which I'm leaving myself open minded to potentially specialize, but I truly think that the things I like most about veterinary medicine lie within primary care and seeing, a little bit of everything, but still maintaining the client relationships of patients that you see from, puppy visit to geriatric visit and maintaining those relationships with people across multiple pets and like getting to know people like that. I really enjoy that aspect of veterinary medicine. And I don't know, maybe it comes from the fact that my mom's been front desk client facing position in veterinary medicine. So that's been a like different outlook that I've had. But that's been kind of my goal within veterinary medicine is to go into primary care. And I, after vet school, probably will hopefully find a good clinic that I want to work for and get to learn from people there. Because, like you said, everywhere you go, you'll learn new things. And I mean, pie in the sky, big dream would probably be to own my own practice, but that's very far off, very distant dream. But it has been something that I've always like thought about.
If you owned your own practice, do you think you would do mixed animal?
I would definitely want somebody who is more like if I was going to open a practice that was mixed animal, I would want somebody that is more large animal focused to go into that business with. Because as much as I like my large animals, it is still something that like it's not the main thing I want to do. I my like ideal patients I would see would be like dogs, cats, and then a little bit of horses sprinkled in.
Hmm.
I
I
mean, don't get me wrong, I like the cows and the goats and the sheeps and stuff, but I don't think that's what I would want to be doing every day.
From what I've gathered, if you're not, I think, intentional about doing the mixed animal work, because a lot of those animals are in production systems, and so they
Hmm.
are in herds and not so much individuals. Even though there are pets that are goats and
Yes,
sheep and cows and
I am very aware.
but I feel like it would be more of a kind of the off occasion that a goat would come in, but it would be one and every so often, so it wouldn't be an everyday kind of thing.
I I would say one of the things that I have tried to work on for interview skills, because I think that's one of the places I have like the most room to grow in, is I have a big problem of one, pausing when I talk, and two, the like transitional like noises almost. They're not really phrases. And so I've told Lewis, I'm like, if you hear me saying or you have to interrupt me and tell me to stop. Like, I know it sounds rude, but I need it to become a better communicator.
That's a good goal. I feel like with public speaking, it is terrifying to because an interview is kind of like public speaking, especially when it's just a camera. That when you're up there and you're talking to however many people, and there is a pause, and maybe it isn't intentional. You just are trying to figure out the next words that you're gonna say, and it's not really there, and you're kind of figuring it out as you say it, and then it's really uncomfortable, and you just want the silence to go away.
Hmm.
I don't know. I struggle with that frequently, especially with this. Like I'll be talking and then I'll go back and I'll listen to it and I'll be pausing between each and every word and I'm like, is that better than saying I have no idea. But
I'm going to be so real with you. Part of why I was down to do this was that I thought it would be really good practice for me to be asked questions, come up with an answer, and deal with these pauses and not my way through it and really work on my speed of coming up with what I'm saying next. Because part of me preparing for interviews and stuff, I have had sample questions and stuff found online that I'll like practice with and set it up, do the exact same time structure, practice, response, structure, and then I'll go back and I'll watch myself do it, which I hate listening to my own voice, but it is important in this scenario. And sometimes I feel like I can watch myself buffer. I'm like, that has to go away. I can't look like I'm buffering. Intentional pauses I think are good. I've seen actually a lot of senior clinicians within the hospital where they have pauses that are intentional. You can tell it's because they're deep in thought. And I feel like mastering that intentional pause, I feel like is like peak speaking skills.
I think confidence has a lot to do with that, especially when you're asked a question. And I think inherently we all expect that when we were asked a question that we need the answer right now. Like the person is expecting us to have the answer in the back of our mind, just waiting to convey it after the question is asked. But in reality, like whenever you ask a question, you don't expect that, at least
Hmm.
not for the most part, unless it's like, "Hey, what time do you want to meet for this thing?" And even then, it's like the concept of coming up with a like 2 p.m. isn't hard, but knowing whether or not that time would actually work,
Hmm.
it takes some time to think about that. And maybe maybe it goes back to the idea that we have unrealistic expectations for ourselves just naturally.
Hmm. I think that giving yourself like the grace to not know and also be like, hey, let me think about that for a second. Or I don't think it's inherently wrong to take a long time to answer something. Obviously, like there is taking too long, but we definitely are harder on ourselves than we would expect anybody else to be. But hmm, I think that thoughtful answering is important and you shouldn't just answer things off, but finding ways to, like you said, I was saying, like the confidence to be like, let me think about that before I just jump into an answer and hold the space for a thoughtful pause versus the oh gosh, what was I thinking is the difference in like having the confidence in yourself to say, no, I'm allowed to think about this for a second and come up with a well formulated response.
I think controlling the space is a good way to phrase it. The and controlling the pause. And also, this happens a few times when people come on here, who are really good like with answering questions. They'll be like, "That's a good question," and just it's just a few seconds, and it's almost like you can pre-program it to be like, "That's a good question," and then you can just go into it
Mhm.
instead of just being like, "Now I have my answer," because I don't know.
I I think that that is a really like good useful skill that I'm trying to work towards because that whenever I got my interview the first time, one of the former student workers who's gone on to be intern,
Now
now is about to
resident,
start her residency.
yeah.
She came over with her husband who has experience in like doing interviews in the business field and stuff. And he and her kind of helped coach me through what the format would be because she had also applied multiple times, been interviewed multiple times. And so she had an experience of like what it felt like. And so she was able to kind of coach me on the, ooh, you're on video and you're fidgeting with your hands. If you like need something, you can hold something in your hands so that you don't look nervous and you're like picking at your wrist wristband that you have on, or I had my like pen that I would write notes about the questions on, and I, without even realizing, I was sitting there clicking a pen as I'm answering the question. And she's like, "You're only allowed to have a pencil during your interview because they're just going to hear click, 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 click the entire time you're answering a question." And I, and one of the things that they had stressed was it is more impactful to sit there and think about what you're going to say than try to fill that space with or spewing nonsense to, but like you said, the that's a good question. Pause, let me answer it is, I feel like, a much better format. And I think good communicators have that skill.
The clicking of the pen reminds me of our professional class or professional skills class where they make us do communication OSCEs, where essentially you just go into a room and you practice your communication skills and you have like a list of things or concepts that you need to hit and the ways that you communicate essentially. So like the ways that you ask questions or the way that you're sitting, um, the things that you're not doing verbally. And I think was the first one that I did the fall of first year. I naturally just like I shake my leg, especially when I'm trying to think about something. So in
Mhm.
class, like my leg is going the entire time. It drives some people nuts during exams, and I don't think about it. Like it doesn't exist in my mind. And sometimes like people will tell me to stop, and then I'll be like, "Oh yes, I'll stop because I don't want to, bother anybody." And then 2 minutes later, it'll start again, and I won't even know about it. So like little things like that, I think translate over to communicating with clients and or even with other doctors in those simulated situations. So I don't know if the interview style that they've chosen it was meant to represent that or highlight those skills in that way, but it probably was intentional that they did that way, or maybe interviews do that just inherently. But no, it definitely comes back, and it feels really unnatural. At least the first time I tried to fix those things, and especially one of the things that they talk about is like you'll be holding either an iPad or a computer in your hand or a notebook, piece of paper, whatever, like taking notes down. Especially if you're getting like a history for a patient. But one of the nonverbal skills that we discuss is um, not having anything in between you and the person you're talking to. So, for example, this computer right here, horrible, horrible for that. It's just immediately right in front of each other. Even these microphones, just like separating the person that you from the person that you're talking to.
Mhm.
And so the thing that you're holding in your hand, which you need to take notes, otherwise you would just be trying to remember everything that you hear,
Yeah.
which I can't do that. But the like you need to write something down and then immediately like hold it off to the side because if you're holding it like this in front of you then it's separating you and the person. So that one it took me a long time to figure out because like I would just keep whatever it is right in front of me because this feels weird
Yeah.
going back and forth like what are we doing. And I always go back to the idea that in my head is like it wouldn't bother me. Like it doesn't bother me now that my computer is in between both of us. Also, it has to be between both of us. There is no other way to go about it. I'm sorry. I need an I want another set of hands. Maybe I promote I I I get Will to
Be your
be
assistant.
yeah. Yeah. Maybe assistant is a good title for it. He'll definitely say no to being my assistant. But um anyways, the the different nonverbal things they're really hard to get rid of because they're just kind of habits.
As I think having somebody that like you trust to call you out on stuff you do unwittingly, I think is really important because like there's just habits that you have that you don't notice, and I or phrases that you say, like you were saying earlier about how you felt that like you started like your sentence similarly a lot at the beginning. And I think having somebody that, like, you can be like, "Hey, be honest with me. Brutally honest. Tell me if there's a phrase I say a lot. Tell me if I do something that is distracting from whenever I speak." And I feel like that's the only way you can grow from them. And, like, having feedback on your communication OSCEs and stuff that kind of note your skills and stuff. That, I mean, the only way to become a better communicator is to be called out on what you do wrong as a communicator.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even for me, I think that's happened with more of the way that I say things. Uh, there's like the phrase, "It's not what you say, it's how you say it." I
Mhm.
have heard that since I was a child. Just I was not a very good communicator. Um, it just I don't know. I don't know why, but in my brain it was just I said the words and I meant this thing, but it did not come across that way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like these past few years where I'm like, okay, now I'm getting it slowly. But it did take a few times where good friends were like, "Hey, you said this, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but it came across this way." And I was like, "Okay, I need to stop doing that."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it spans all aspects of communication. Um, and the curriculum kind of hammers that hard, at least at A&M. And I want to say that other vet schools are also doing that as well, but I'm not I'm not in that world. Um, you mentioned people calling you out on things. Do you think you got a good kind of like I want to say crew, but that's not the right word. Kind of like uh cheer squad behind you?
Yeah. I think, my husband, good support system. I have really good group of friends, and I think a good part of having a good support system is being a good support system and creating that environment where everybody feels like they want what's best for everybody else. And that's like you're saying, we were talking about calling you out on somebody on something, creating an environment where people aren't going to get offended if you're like, "Hey, I just want you to know that I know you didn't mean it like that, but other people might. And like, I'm not mad at you." And creating that environment where everybody feels comfortable to say that, I think is a really like cool thing to have in a community.
How do you think you did that?
Hmm. I think that spending time thinking about how what you're going to tell somebody will be received and kind of preparing for that response of like, and what both of us just said, the I know you didn't mean this, but so you know that it came off this way of you already know that somebody is going to be defensive of, "Oh, I didn't mean it like that." And so coming first off the bat with a like empathetic of, "I know you didn't, and we're friends, and so I'm not offended by what you just said, but so you know, and I'm trying to help you out person to person. You might get yourself into trouble later on." But I think it also requires you not taking offense to things. Like, you have to have the same expectations for them that you would set for yourself. And, the whole it's kinda like that you're not on TikTok, so you there's the whole, like, thing going around about, like, everybody wants a village, but nobody wants to be a villager.
Hmm.
And, like, you have to be okay with being, like, uncomfortable in situations and putting yourself out there in a way that is helpful for other people in order to have that help come back to you.
Hmm. It's like you want to be on a sports team, but in order to be on a good sports team or to be a good team at all, they have to know things about you that maybe aren't the best, which I guess in the context of sports, because I brought it up, like maybe that's skills that you aren't the best at.
Mhm.
and it would be best for everybody if those were exposed because then you could work on it.
Yeah.
But it's painful to expose those kinds of things. And going back to your own personal growth and whatever aspect it is, like we talked about communication, but you could go back to like education in general. Like exposing those things isn't fun a lot of the times. And it does suck sometimes to be like, hey, the way that you're studying or the way that you're saying these things, like, isn't the best. Um, and it would be best if for you and for everybody else if you changed it. And that comes with the the trust and honesty part that
Yeah, and I feel like there has to be like a very solid foundation of like relationship you build with people to be at that level. Like obviously you can't make a new friend and be like, "Hey, so the way that you study sucks." But if you have a strong foundation with somebody of like they know that you would not say something just to be mean. They know that you're coming from a place of caring. Then I feel like it's all about gauging the levels of okay, is this person going to take it the wrong way or do they know I would never say that to be mean to them or to be rude. I just want what's best for them.
yeah, the funniest example, at least for me, was so there's like different phrases that and different words that people use for like different cultures and stuff. Back where I'm from, like we all call each other buddy. It's
Yeah.
just a word that's used, and I don't know why, but I call one of my friends buddy, and I was kind of making a joke, pointing fun at something. He did not find it funny at all, um, and he told me afterwards, like, "Yeah, don't use that word." And I was like, "Oh, okay, my bad. How many times have I done that and I didn't know?" And he also was like, "Yeah, you're gonna say that to the wrong guy, and he's gonna get really upset." And
Think you mean, hey there, buddy, like little buddy.
yeah, yeah, I don't have the southern draw to I don't know. I After I got that feedback, I was like, "Man, like, do I do this for no reason? Like, what why am I using this word? Because I never really thought about it before." And then I went home and my brother said it. He's like, "Oh, hey, my buddy's right here," or used it like saying the word buddy at somebody, and I was like, "Ah, I got it. We all just do it, and it's just different here."
I would say my husband uses the word buddy all the time, and I have never thought to call somebody my buddy in my life, but I mean, it's definitely just like there's certain words you pick up from the people you're around, which is definitely a concept I find really interesting of anybody you spend time around for a long time, like you pick up their phrases and it kind of creates a little like collective lingo of a group of people.
Yeah, it's funny. Your husband, Lewis, he has a southern draw, and you don't have as much, but you both grew up in the same place. Like, I don't understand. How
Yeah,
did that happen?
I think it has a lot to do with the people we spent time with. I did not spend as much time around people who were from like country places and I definitely have my family is from Texas and my older relatives do have like a southern drawl and stuff like that. But I think he just spent more time around people who have a southern drawl and I don't know if you've ever spent time around somebody with a southern drawl for an extended period of time and you like start to
You
feel
start to do it.
yourself do
Yeah.
it. Like just us as humans, we tend to mimic. And it's kind of funny, but I feel like he definitely spent more time around people who had thicker accents than he does, and therefore he picked up a little bit of it. And also there's just like certain amount of who taught you how to talk. And like there's words that I have like realized that I pronounce like slightly wrong, and it is because I realized my mom pronounces them wrong, and she's the one who taught me how to speak. And so now I have to think about saying orange correctly every time I say orange.
How do you normally say it?
I instinctively say orange.
It's not even too terribly southern. It's
No,
just different.
it's just wrong. And it wasn't until I was like in middle school or high school, so he was like, "Orange?" And I was like, "It's just how it comes out of my mouth. That's how." And then one day I was talking to my mom and she was saying something. She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go pick up some oranges." And I was like, "It's you.
It's
You're
her
why I
fault.
say it like that."
Do you think you're gonna stay in Texas even after vet school?
I want to. I I'm a eighth generation Texan. I live, breathe Texas. I've never thought of another place I've wanted to live. And also I have the added factor of I am married, and so I have somebody else's livelihood to consider whenever I think about where I want to go for vet school, for after vet school to practice. And, it's a discussion rather than a decision of he has a job too. That's not. And obviously, marriage is compromise and figuring out what's best for the whole, but it's definitely one of those things where you have to consider a lot more factors in that scenario.
How'd those conversations go? Because, like, in my personal experience, I don't really have to discuss with anybody about where I might be going afterwards, or at least not too terribly serious, because, like, I just kind of, at least in my position, I am not married, so I do not have to think about somebody else's livelihood also being in the location that I want to have my livelihood in.
Yeah, I would say it was funny because, I was raised to be a strong, independent woman. And it was funny the first time that, like, I had said something about, I don't want to make a decision just off of you know, the fact of like where a guy wants me to live or not live. And my mom was like, "You mean your husband?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I get that makes more sense. But I, Lewis is so supportive and has pretty much told me that we will make whatever work. It'll just take a lot more effort, especially because with vet school, not having a major stream of income because, vet school is a full time job. I mean, he will be who is supporting me. And that job that he would have to leave or find or whatever, it would be the source of income for both of us while I'm in school. So it's definitely a interesting consideration. And I think it's all about like being supportive of both parties' endeavors. Because like I would never want him to sacrifice his goals and aspirations in the name of my goals and aspirations. And we've been together since we were 14, so we've followed each other across several endeavors. And I think being supportive and willing to compromise is an important skill to have.
You made it work this far.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys are going to make it work just fine.
I'm not worried about it. Like I said, there was a brief period of time where I had talked about Arkansas just opened a new vet school and they were doing like admittance for this fall.
Oh,
Like
they just opened up a new one?
mhm.
I didn't know
And
about this.
they opened up admittance for like this fall like a couple months ago, and it was basically like first come first serve. And like we talked about it and I was like I could apply. And it kind of came down to this had to that short of notice wasn't something we could do, but he's like, I fully support you wanting to go wherever you want to go, but we need enough time to logistically make that move. And 4 months is not enough time to move across states, find a new job that can sustain us in a new state, and figure all that logistics out.
Also, first come, first serve on a vet school class. Like, I know nothing about this
I don't think it
Arkansas
was like
college.
it's not actually first come first serve, but it was like they
Short
weren't
noticed.
going to close the applicant pool until they had picked all their applicants.
Okay.
So,
Because it was just that short of notice.
yes, like I think I forget what month it was, but it was this year. So it wasn't your typical application cycle where you apply in the fall,
Mm.
get in next fall.
So, like, they would be starting in August in
Yes.
a month
Yes.
or a little over. Hmm.
I don't know at what point. I can't remember what month that this was happening, but it was definitely a like you had to be willing to up and go kind of situation. And I feel like for married students and even more so students that have whole families and stuff, I feel like that's a lot harder.
Oh, yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
have
Because
to,
moving kids to different schools and
yeah,
different friends, that whole
which
jazz.
I am so impressed by all of our students that have like whole families. Every once in a while, I'll see our fourth years and the grocery store. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have like children. I I am so impressed by all of them. Like you do all of this and then you go home and you raise a human being.
Yeah. I'm equally as impressed. The You mentioned earlier how vet school is a full-time job. They actually describe it as two full-time jobs, if not a full-time job and a part-time job, because
I That makes sense.
you, especially first year, it gets a little lighter in the morning, schedule wise for second year and then third year, but you are there 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in class, in labs, doing whatever, and then you go home and you got to study, and you know you can study as late as you want, but you still got to wake up early enough to go to class at 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the weekends, you're studying because you got an exam on Monday, but you just got an exam Friday. And, you don't want to really study from exam to exam. And that's a whole thought process, like, that we can get into if you want. But, like, the goal is not to do exam to exam studying, which in undergrad, it flies way easier to do
Mm-hmm.
that. But it it is, you're studying at school, you go home and you study, and on the weekends you're studying, and there is time to exist outside of vet school, and to have a well-rounded life, and that is how people can manage to have kids. But no, it is a lot.
Yeah. I would say I mean, obviously undergrad is a lot different. But I remember whenever I graduated undergrad and like got a full-time job and stuff, having several people be like, "Oh, like how's it feel, now you're have a full-time job, like so much worse, right? Like don't you miss school?" I'm like, "School takes up like all of your mental space because you're there physically and then you're studying, you're doing assignments. You even whenever you're not there, you're mentally there." Whereas I feel like I mean, not all jobs, but a lot of jobs, it's you're there. And like, yes, you think about your job some at home, but for the most part, you get to clock out at 5 o'clock and not think about it until 8 a.m. the next morning. And so personally, I think being in school, and controversial opinion, may be harder than having a job.
I feel like it depends.
Obviously depends on like what you're studying,
Hmm.
what your job is, but I've always thought that that was like an interesting take from different perspectives of people who like, oh yeah, I miss being in school. I want to go back. Like I wish I was back in college. Like that was so much better than my day-to-day job now. Versus some people who are like, oh yeah, you could not make me go back to school in a million years.
I think that the caliber in which you approach school and work match with that framework. So you can very easily go to college, whether it's a community college or a public university. Private universities a little harder because it's harder to get into and they cost a lot more, and so you got to be really careful. But even then, public universities are very expensive. The Anyways, A&M has a lot of students, and it's not, um, maybe not easy to get in. It's not impossible to get in as an undergrad, but maybe not the easiest thing in the world. But as soon as you're in, it is possible to go through a degree, whichever degree it is, and coast
Yeah.
and just get the diploma at the end.
Yeah.
And part of that, means that you can not think about it outside of class and you maybe don't show up to all your classes and, you do whatever you want on the weekend or, in the evening kind of thing. Or you can approach school as like, I'm going to do whatever I can to, you know, set myself apart from the average,
Hmm.
which is kind of the mindset you need in order to approach applying to vet school, um, like throughout all 4 years to like get the best application you could possibly manage, which isn't always possible. But for the people who approach undergrad that way, I kind of see the aspect of thinking of class outside of class, thinking of things and how to do things better, you know, when no one's watching kind
Hmm.
of thing reflects the higher level jobs that exist in the world. So people who own businesses, from what I've heard and the books that I've read and podcasts that I've listened to, the people who start businesses, that is all they do every day, all day for many years, and they don't get anything out of it most times. And I think what is it, the statistic like 90% of small businesses fail.
Hmm.
And, you know, some of those like they're started and they're kind of uh half in, half out kind of thing, but a lot of them, like, people go full bore and they're trying for years and get nothing out of it, and that's super stressful, and that's a little I can imagine that's on an even higher caliber than school, but at least for me in undergrad, like, I was constantly thinking, "What could I do additionally to try and get my application that I'm going to not even I haven't even started in for the most part, but when I submit it in the summer, after my senior year, like, w how could I make it the best that it could possibly be?" And so it's like, you know how people get really anxious when doing when taking exams because they extravasate? That's not a word. Um, they blow whatever that exam is out of proportion. So, like, I'm gonna take this exam and I might fail the exam, which means I might fail the class, which means I'm going to drop
Yeah.
out of college and that's my life's gonna be over kind of thing. Which in reality, it's like, it's not that way. It'll
Yeah.
be fine. And like, let me know what you thought from undergrad, but I like many times caught myself thinking like, if I don't do this thing the way that I want and need to do it, then it could be the difference of me getting in and not getting in.
No,
And
for sure. I definitely feel like there is a certain pressure of being pre-vet, pre-med, all of those things where you still have to apply to something, where you are constantly going, well, am I doing enough? And that constant feeling of, could I add something else to my already busy schedule? Could I fit it in? And then I think also at the same time, typically in undergrad, you're still really new to the whole adult thing and learning how to be an adult and manage your time without the structures of, school, normal school day in a high school classroom and your parents telling you when you have to do certain things. And I feel like undergrad is like you're learning a lot about how to just be a person and then add on the I'm trying to be the most impressive person I know to get into school. And I think it really forces you to take a look at yourself and like really it's kind of a sink or swim time management lesson. And I sometimes you sink a little bit and that's the only way you learn. As I remember right it was right after like COVID restrictions started picking up a little bit. And I was like, okay, now I have to like be the most involved individual possible. And also I want to fast track school as much as possible, take my hard classes, get them out of the way. And I wound up taking like 3 of the hardest classes of my degree plan in the same semester just because of how my degree plan was falling and what classes needed to be taken before I could take other classes. And then I'd also decided, oh, I'm going to join the horse judging team so that I have like involvement in something in my like college program. And then I also got a job because I wanted to get more clinical experience and get work get back in the veterinary field working with veterinarians and trying to get rec letters. And it was a rude awakening because that was also the first time I'd ever been in a like actual classroom exam kind of setting, and realizing, oh, I actually, as much as I want to do it all, I have to be strategic about how I do it all and plan to do it all. You can't just do it and it all works out in the way that like you kind of can in high school. So, you still have to feed yourself, still have to have time to study, still have time to, breathe so you don't burn out. And that semester was a really rough semester. And I think it was the worst grades I got my entire college career. And it really made me go back to the drawing board of, okay, I need to gauge the importance of things that I'm getting involved in and plan my time around, okay, what do I have time for? And what are my priorities? And come up with somewhat more of a schedule of how can I be involved and not crash and burn. And I think that there's a lot of pressure to be involved when you're pre-vet, and you can do it. You just have to do it smart.
I think that the hardest part about my undergrad, or the hardest semester for me, was the first one because I didn't care very much in high school, and I kind of brought that with undergrad into undergrad, and I was like, meh, 50-50, A's and B's. It'll be fine. I got into college with it. I hardly like I didn't care about my courses and I just showed up and did the thing. And if I was the most talented person in the world, like I could not even care and get A's, but I couldn't like I didn't care and got like so grades. And then I think it was towards the end of the fall semester of my freshman year, one of the professors was talking about vet school applications. I think it was Dr. Ramsey, and he did the thing which most animal science professors do in an
I
animal
remember
science
the Dr.
course.
Ramsey, put your hand up if you want to
Hmm.
go to vet school.
And other people in other universities had the same experience. Like
Mm,
it's a common thing, and it was online, so it was less of the raise your hand kind of thing. That came later after COVID, but this time he was talking about like he's like, I know most of you guys want to go to vet school, and it's like here like the average GPA for this past year was a 3.79, and I was looking at what my GPA was going to be for that semester, and I was like, I'm not even close, like, and I'm starting like I was like I'm starting off on the wrong foot, like, and then I did some simple math to see if I did the best that I could do by the end of my college career, what my GPA would be when I applied. And I was like, oh, it could be, this great, but I have to start now kind of
yeah.
thing. And it was kind of like a switch was flipped in that moment. Also, that was COVID. I was listening to podcasts and reading books about sleep and all of these different things. And I was like trying to improve myself. And I think I had that next spring semester in my freshman year, I had the best sleep I probably ever had in my entire life. Because
Sleep maxing.
no, no. uh, um, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna read books for like an hour before going to bed, and then lights are off. I'll be in bed like by 9:30, so I'm at least asleep by 10 o'clock. I'll wake up 5:30, 6 o'clock, go to the gym kind of thing, 8 hours of sleep every night. And I was. And then kind of like how you described it, the COVID restrictions lifted going into sophomore year. And I was like, oh, I got to be more involved. I joined the lacrosse team. I joined a pre-vet organization. And I eventually was like part of the leadership there. And I eventually realized I was like, oh, I just had a bunch of time. That's why I had like the privilege of having sleep. And then slowly,
Privilege of having sleep.
yeah, yeah. The now it's like I'm lucky if I get 8 hours of sleep. Even on weekends, I'm like, I'm, you know, staying up looking at emails or whatever, or planning out the next week, or meal prepping because I haven't meal prepped all day, and I said I was gonna do it in the morning, but I got caught busy doing other things, and I'm like, the number of things that I kind of forced myself to do made it a lot harder to do the very basic things,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think I'm still struggling with that. I don't think I ever figured it out.
I was like, hey, you at least fake it well then, because I think of you as a very like disciplined, scheduled person.
I have a caffeine addiction. Um,
I know.
it's I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm addicted to caffeine. It's great.
I also have a caffeine addiction. I feel like most people who work in vet med do actually.
At least, some people I know in my class, they're like, "Yeah, I don't drink coffee or I don't have caffeine at all." I'm like, "Good for you."
I am envious, but personally cannot relate. But yeah, I also like had a difficult transition from high school to college because I was one of those people that in high school, like I didn't study. I just I could skim through the content before I pay attention in class, and then skim through my notes before an exam and get A's and never learned to study. And then I got to college and I was like, oh, this is actually a lot of content and a lot of high level content that I actually do have to put in effort to study. And so I spent a gr- pretty large part of my undergrad kind of troubleshooting studying as a concept in general and figuring out what worked and what did not work. Because I'm a terrible note taker. I am much more of like an auditory learner. And I find myself whenever I'm taking a lot of notes that I stop listening because I'm just trying to copy stuff down. And I had to learn over several years that I had to pay more attention to listening and writing down key points than I could just trying to get everything down because I would just completely mentally clock out.
You're gonna love lecture capture. All the lectures are recorded. You can go back whenever you want and listen to them.
I That was one of like the really great things about COVID is having recorded lectures. I remember that semester I was talking about that I had a terrible time. The only way I made a comeback in uh pre-pro was because my professor unfortunately got jury duty for like 3 weeks.
It's a big case.
Yeah, I have no I it probably was something terrible and bad and should not have, but the only reason I recovered was he hadn't shared any lecture videos with us that far, and this man talked really fast, and I was just trying to keep up the entire this was my first semester of in-person classes, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's not any words on his slides, and he's talking at 100 miles a minute." And then he had a lecture videos that he sent us while he had jury duty, and I was like, "Oh, I can slow him down. I could actually, like, rewind if I miss something." And I started listening to his lecture videos as if they were a podcast. Like, I'd be brushing my teeth in the morning listening to his lecture videos. Big academic comeback in that class.
Huh. Yeah, the idea of lectures being recorded kinda has changed my view of at least higher level e education. I've heard of some small examples of new quasi universities. They're not. I don't really want to call them universities, even though they are educational. Like uh, they have the goal of educating
Yeah.
students because they are online and they're recorded lectures, and like tuition is dirt cheap compared to the
Yeah.
tens of to hundreds of thousands of dollars you would pay at even a public university. Like these are concepts that you can record a lecture. I can then give you the lecture, and then you learn the material. Like that didn't exist 50 years ago, or at least not in the manner that, like the quality that it exists now. And I don't know, at least for me, it comes, it makes me question the need to have people be in person at all for a lecture, other than because, like, for the professor, it, I can imagine, is unfortunate to give a presentation to an audience that isn't there, at least not in person, because you have
Yeah.
nothing to, you know, feed off of,
Mhm.
nothing to bounce what you're saying off of.
Yeah. That's how I feel about the, like, new format of interviews of, like, you're just talking to a computer, and that empty space is kinda scary, and I can imagine that professors recording lecture videos probably feel that way.
I, yeah, when I had to do my in person, not in person, when I had to do my online interview, the multiple mini interviews for A&M, it was I was never comfortable. And it wasn't even the fact that we were interviewing. It was just the fact that I was looking at it. I was talking to a camera. There wasn't a person there. I
Yeah.
was like, and in the back of my mind afterwards, I was like, I have nothing to gauge what I did off of.
Mhm.
Like, I can't even say they smiled when I said this,
Yeah.
or they were nodding their head as I did this. So I must have been doing good in some manner. Or, they were kind of off, not paying attention or looking down or looking up. And it looked like they were waiting for me to just stop talking. And, maybe I should have, changed. I shouldn't have done what I did, and, you know, noted for the future. Like that doesn't exist. The camera does not move. It's just there. And
Yeah.
so
My first year of interviewing, I put a little starfish sticker right next to my camera. That way I had somebody to talk to, which
it's a
is
good
silly.
idea.
It's silly, but it, like, makes you maintain eye contact, and yeah, it was silly, but I felt like it helped a little bit, but I consider myself to be, like, a peoply person, and, like, I like to talk, but it's kind of funny. I like to talk, but I also am terrified of public speaking. Um, Getting better, but I definitely think that not having the, like, normal human back and forth that, like, you typically would have in a traditional interview makes it a lot harder for you to gauge. I know that logistically for a applicant pool of that size and for out of state students that it is really, like, something that makes interviews a lot more accessible and easier to go through, and I understand why they do it, but it makes it really scary.
It is understandable logistically why they have it online. But I think that, one, I think that the effort, time, and even the money probably to get those people to be in person and have that human to human interaction for an interview process of something on the magnitude of getting into vet school, where you are going to train them to talk to people face to face. And, you know, part of that goal is to have them be proficient in their professional skills,
Mhm.
which I think is something that is preached very heavily at A&M specifically. It blows my mind that it is not changed back to being in person, because it was COVID originally why they
Yeah.
they put it online, and they just aren't changing it. And I'm sure there are reasons, and I would love to talk to somebody who has some influence on that, because I think I have no data driven evidence as to how much better it would be, and the different selection of applicants, and how that selection would be different if the interviews were in person,
Mhm.
but just inherently, the way that I think about it, I think that it is almost tragic to think that people who are good at communicating with another person are getting thrown off or not being able to at least show those skills just because of the process that in which that the application is structured. A process that was designed or changed because of something that has nothing to do with the vet school application process anyways. Like, it was
Yeah.
COVID, like, people couldn't be in person. So, no, I sometimes I reference people that or the type of people that apply to vet school that are really good at being being a people person.
Mhm.
Because I think back when I was an undergrad, I was not a people person. Even now, when I meet new people, like maybe in a social situation, and I'm not in I don't have the most energy to talk. I just can't think of what to talk about or how to really connect with somebody. It just isn't an inherent skill that I have. It is something that kind of like public speaking for you. It's something that I work on. And so, even if the interview was in person for me, I think that it wouldn't change very much. But you are kind of somebody that I reference a lot when I'm like, this is somebody that, like, when it comes to the type of person that would do GP and the type of person that would specialize, I'm like, this person would be better at GP than I would be at GP, even though that comparing is not the best mindset to be in. But I'm like, all all that needs to happen is you need to get in vet school. And then you'll excel in being a general practitioner. Like, yes, vet school is going to be very difficult. And there will be subjects that are very difficult um, because they are for everybody. But if you can just get to the point where you can be at a practice and be with people, like, you will get it. Um, and the interview process, I don't think, like, highlights that skill.
I'll say it's easy for me to be biased because it's something that goes against my personal strengths about the interview process, but because for me, the interview process feels a lot more like public speaking, and I don't know if you remember at all, like, during the COVID time where a couple times they would have you do presentations and stuff that you had to record to your computer
Hmm.
rather than you weren't in class, so you could present, like those kind of things, and it feels a lot more like that than it does having an interview in the traditional sense with somebody. It's like, I feel like I don't know how to show my personality or that I am a personable person to a computer, and it's definitely something that I've been working on of how I can improve, and that is something that I am actively working on trying to figure out how to be personable to a computer. Um, and I think a lot of that comes down to just being a more natural speaker. And like I said, that's something I am actively working on improving. But I also am curious of the decision making process behind it. And I, like I said, I do see how it can definitely improve logistics, having them online, make it more fair because you're not dealing with the circumstances of, oh, this person was interviewed in the morning where everybody was still, yeah, we're interviewing, we're excited, versus the end of the day where, like, oh my gosh, I've interviewed 10 bajillion people and I really just want to go home now and I'm hungry and I'm tired. And I score them based on that versus just having a bunch of videos after the fact that people can review at a more manageable pace.
Yeah, and you can replay videos
Yeah.
and go over it again and be like, okay, did I miss something? Was their answer really as good as I think it was, or as bad as I think it was?
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Uh, Also, it's easier to convey a question in the same way equally across all interviews because, you know, if you ask different questions in different interviews, how are you going to judge across those
Mhm.
interviews and say this person answered this question this way, but this different question for this different person, they answered it, there just isn't commonality enough to it's almost like for an experiment, you control um, all the external variables except for one. And so all the differences that appear, you would assume is from that one variable.
Mhm.
And in-person interviews, even the way that you ask a question or the person who's asking the question could change it. So you could say the exact same words, but in a different way. And that would influence how the person answers.
Yeah.
All these things are different, like, drawbacks from in-person interviews. But even with all that, personally, I think,
I was like, it would be interesting, like you're saying, having like a data-based like evidence of what the differences are. Because I mean, like I know that there are still schools that do in-person interviews. I personally have not had an interview at any of those, so I can't talk to that experience, but I think it would be interesting to see what like statistically different results of like what the class looks like based on those interviews would be like. I don't know.
I mean, in my personal experiences, I've had in-person interviews for jobs and for different programs, not
Yeah.
for vet school. And I felt way more comfortable going through those kinds of interviews. And I prepared way less. And some of them I was like, it was at the end of the day and I was exhausted, but I still could like feed off of the other person and the other people in the room and be like, okay, they were receiving what I am conveying.
I was I've like at this point also been on the other side of it, interview table, helping interview for new employees at the hospital. And like there is a certain level of you, even as somebody who's helping interview, can sense the vibe of it's an interview, it's stressful, and I can make my body language be more comforting to them versus being scary. You can have a more relaxed body language to put them at ease and kind of help mitigate that where, somebody's computer is their computer. And I mean, I'm sure it could also go the other way of somebody could put off a body language of very standoffish and not comforting at all and make you more nervous. So there's definitely pros and cons to both ways, I think.
Yeah. It would be interesting to talk to somebody who has some influence on that. Because my only wish for that is to improve the application process. Because any application process is inherently flawed because nothing's perfect. And I would imagine I don't obviously don't know the mindset behind the vet school application exactly, but I imagine it's to attract and gather the best people who among the people who apply for that year and the best people for uh, who have the best potential of becoming the best veterinarian. I said the best like four times. Let me see if I can reword that. People who, by the end of the curriculum, would be the best veterinarians um, among that pool of applicants. And so it's not even the best people who know the most about veterinary medicine at this point in time. It's who's going to be the best student, who's going to then be able to use that information that they gather from being a student and then can convey that properly to other students, professors, and then owners. So, and I mean, the communications part is highlighted so much in our curriculum. So, yeah, yeah. Going back to the old high school days, because you mentioned it earlier, I was not. So I said that I was a bad student, and I was. I was not a good student, but it wasn't as if I didn't go to class or I, was disruptive or whatever. I remember in my you did you guys have world history AP?
Mhm.
We called it WAP. Different that word
Yeah.
has a different meaning nowadays, but
Yeah, no, I we also called it WAP.
okay. I think I told someone that, like, late in undergrad, and they were like, "You called it what?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, that word meant something, like, didn't mean" anyways.
I was in AP US History was A-push.
Yeah, yeah. See, I didn't take that. It was my sophomore year that I took World History AP, and I didn't take very many AP classes because this class specifically made me realize that I was like, I'm just not whatever it is required to take these higher level classes, I don't have. At least not right now. Because I would sit up at night until like 3 in the morning trying to read the textbook and then show up to class at whatever I like, you leave for school at 7 or 7:30. I don't even remember when the classes start, probably 8 a.m. And, I'd get barely any sleep. And sometimes I would pull all-nighters to do work or to read textbooks or to do stuff for classes. Now I wouldn't dream to ever do an all-nighter. I'll stay up a little late sometimes, rarely, but I know that, like, if I don't have sleep, like, whatever I might have known is gone. It just won't be there. So but, like, I would do that, and I did that for, like, 3 like, the last 3 years of high school, and by the end of it, I was like, "I have no idea what I learned." Like, it's all gone. It just I just scraped by, like, as a so-so student and didn't take those higher level classes. Like, if I could have relaxed and not tried, and I would have still, like, and made A's by doing that, then I think I would have. But whenever I would relax and not try, I could see my grades go down. Like, I would have an exam and I would fail it. And I was like, "Oh, like, I know people who don't try and they do significantly better." Like, I don't know what's going on. And I don't really honestly, I don't know what it was. But, like, we talked about the transition into undergrad. When I got into undergrad, like, it was the only thing I thought about was, like, school.
Mhm.
And so maybe that, like, forced me to be like, focus on it more than even though I was, like, focusing on it in high school. Like, I was focusing on it. And like I said, I would stay up way too late and sometimes not sleep at all. And it was not effective. And I don't know. I don't know. It was very strange.
I I would say whenever I said that, like, I didn't study in high school and that kind of stuff, I was still insane. Like, don't get me wrong. I was very academically fueled, I guess I would say, in high school. Like, school was the end all be all for me. And like I didn't do sports. I did yearbook, but like and I had a job once I was old enough, but I I I was intense. Like I took every AP class I could. At one point, I think I was taking 5 AP classes at once, and I was a little psychotic for that, not gonna lie. I would regularly stay up till 3 in the morning, and I will say I am just kind of a night owl by nature. Not so much anymore because, once you're an adult and you kind of have to have a more normal schedule, you got to figure it out. But I've definitely had some really insane sleep schedules over the year of like academic. It's like in high school, I was constantly up to like 3. There was a period of time in college where I felt like I was microdosing sleep to study. I was like, I'm going to study and then I'm going to sleep for 30 minutes. Then I'm going to wake up and study more. And then, spoiler alert, that does not work.
See, you gotta try some ideas out to realize that they're bad ideas.
Yeah, no, really bad ideas. Also, you can't learn through osmosis of sleeping with your textbooks. I've tried that too. I used to pretty exclusively sleep with my textbooks, so I could study until I fell asleep, and then immediately start studying when I woke up. And yeah, I think definitely by the end of college, I had learned some like healthy boundaries of okay, I still have to take care of myself, or else like you said, you're no good if you aren't taking care of yourself and you burn yourself out. And I think that's also like having the intensity that I had in high school. Like you can't stay that intense forever or else you won't be happy. You have to have things that bring you joy outside of school. You have to have hobbies. You have to have, and like towards the end of high school, I had found a lot of hobbies and I had a job that I loved. And I, I think having things outside of academics that you enjoy is really important to your sanity inside school. And that was something that I didn't like really fully grasp the concept of until I was in college, I think.
Do you think that do you think coming back to school after what has it been, 2 years off?
It's going by the time, if I, God willing, get in this next round, I will have been out of school for 3.5 years, which is definitely something that scares me a little bit. Um, but I think also will give me a pretty like good perspective of like from a life standpoint of there's more to life than just school. And I think it'll be hard to have like hit the ground running with the same intensity, but I think I at least am well aware of what vet school entails and the intensity that it requires. So I'm not like going in blind of, and I have those expectations because I know so many people in that realm and I work at a hospital full of people who have been through that experience. And so I think being mentally prepared hopefully will help some. But I definitely think there will be an adjustment period of getting back into the groove of studying. And I definitely like still even working, try to, keep learning things, researching things so that I don't lose those skills altogether. But it's definitely going to be an adjustment. But I think there's also benefits to, you know, knowing things that I have that I enjoy outside of it. And therefore, I have things to turn to as a good outlet for stress and self care and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a way to really know what it's like until you do it.
Hmm.
Like you can talk about what it feels like or what it might feel like, or somebody can explain it to you. But
It's still going to be different.
oh yeah, and it will be different. There have been a number of people I've talked to, either on here or out there in the world, and we have the same opinions. Where if somebody's like, this class is easy, this class is hard, or this thing is easy, this thing is hard, and we're like, you take it with a grain of salt, because in reality, you're two different people.
Hmm.
It's not going to be the same thing. You don't have the same strength and weaknesses, or the same, interests, and so, or the same drive. And I've caught myself a number of times, like thinking that something was going to be easy and it's not, or something thinking that something's going to be really difficult and that turns out to be a lot easier than I thought it would have been. And yeah, you don't really know what it's like until you do it. And the beginning of vet school, like first semester, you go through orientation before vet school starts, and the first week, and everyone's like, "Yay!" It's like, "Welcome, you're doing it, you're doing the thing, you made it, yay, good job, yay!" And then about week 2 or 3 hits. Well, no, I think it's week 3 or after week 3, start of week 4, where you have your first exams. You do your first round of exams. You finish on Friday. You're tired. It's been about a month, and then you're like, "Oh, I have another exam on Monday." And you're like, everyone's around, like, you're like, no one else, like, no one is no longer saying, "Yay, you did it," because you're doing it. Like, all those people are now going off and continuing whatever they're doing. Like, there isn't a crowd saying, "Yay, keep going."
Yeah.
Even though if you asked, or if you go and talk to somebody, they're like, "No, you're doing it. Like, good job, just keep going." They're just not inherently doing that anymore. And so
Yeah.
you very much are like, "Oh, I'm here. Like, now I'm doing the thing." And there were a number of times, like, in that moment where we looked up at the like me and my friends look up at the second years at the time. They're like, yeah, no, this is it. Like it was really cool when it started. It's not so cool anymore. It just sucks. So
Yeah. And I definitely think get to see kind of like the flip side of it with our fourth years that are on clinicals. And like the first few weeks, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. This is what I've sat in a classroom for these last few years, just for this day to be in clinicals. And they're so excited and they're so like they want to be hands on, all that. And then there's some point during the fall where they start, oh, I got to take my NAVLE. And they're stressed and studying and they're still trying to be the best students they can, but also are stressed beyond belief because, they can graduate, but if you don't pass your NAVLE, you can't practice. And so you have to give them a little bit more grace during that time period because they're really stressed. And then you hit that period of time like after they find out that they passed their NAVLE where they're like, yeah, we can go back to, just trying to absorb everything from clinicals. And then like right at the end of the year, whenever almost everybody's like lined up jobs and they're all tired because they've been on call for, a year straight and they're just tired and you're like, you're almost there. Don't lose the light in your eye quite yet. You're almost a doctor.
yeah, finishing the race.
Yeah.
That's how I feel during finals week. I'm sure to a lesser extent, but no, getting to the end of a class is like done 90% of the work. It's 10% more. It's almost
Yeah.
there. Um, let's wrap up.
All right.
What last question?
Okay.
If you had anything to say to anybody listening, what would it be? I know broad.
Oh, that's a really broad, hard question.
Maybe I should reword it for people because I've tried like giving, examples. Like you could talk to undergrads, you could talk to vet students, you could talk to vets, you could talk to people not in the vet field, and then people usually get the, oh my gosh, there's so many people. What do I say? Maybe I should reword it.
I was like, I feel dumb saying this as somebody who's not gotten into vet school yet, but I feel like it's important to know that like a no is not a no forever. And like not getting into vet school is not the end of the world because it felt like it the first time. And it's hard being rejected in a sense, but I don't think that that has to be the end. It's not always a no, it's a not right now. And I feel like life will show you that there are other things that you will get to experience because you got that no. And you'll have so many opportunities to grow because of that no.
That's why they ask what you would do if you didn't get in, right?
Yeah. I
Hmm.
was saying, and I've had that question a lot of, oh, you didn't get in, so what are you going to do now? And the question is keep going, or the answer is keep going. And I mean, I have a job that I love, a life that I love, and I have continued to grow as a professional, as a person, and being denied from vet school did not stop that. It just opened up other opportunities for me to get different experience before I get to the end destination. And I believe that there is a timing for all of us personally.
Cool. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dude, that was awesome.
Oh, thanks. I'm a good yapper. What can I say?